very good morning to you, our viewers. Happy Women's Day to our women and myself. Indeed, very good morning to you. Once again, thank you for joining us. Indeed, we are back on your screens. This is Wednesday, right?
Exactly.
Wednesday night, Wednesday. It's a Women's Day.
Women's Day and the ladies' night. Quite an interesting coincidence we have for the year 2023.
Exactly.
We are celebrating women.
Our women.
And interestingly, Happy Women's Day, Sharon.
Thank you, Patrick. You know what?
Yeah.
Anyway, your ancestors spoke to you to say, Patrick, tell this woman.
Oh.
They spoke to you, they whispered to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And thankfully you listened. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's quite a good day, and we are just quite a number of activities have been lined up from the government side. The media as well, even us as Camnet TV. We have dedicated this day to women, and you are going to see most of our programming tilted towards women for today. And the women will do everything, including writing stories, including
you lie.
Including enjoying the moment. So
you lie.
I'm just escorting this woman. Immediately after this, I'm going home. Interesting. Let's go to our first segment. Today we'll start with the
health corner. Let's see what the doctors have for us. Indeed, it is a woman in the medical sector, and we are appreciating her as well for consistently bringing us the health corner here on Camnet TV. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's look at this.
Hi, good morning and welcome to the health corner here on the breakfast show. I am Dr. Nakubiana Mfaya. So today we're going to talk about the signs and symptoms of cervical cancer. This week we have been talking about cervical cancer, and we want to understand what are some of the signs and symptoms. How can you know that you have cervical cancer? Now, there are different signs and symptoms, and sometimes people who have this condition might not have these symptoms, and so you might be asymptomatic, and you may only discover it at the hospital when they are checking for something else. And so it's important that you do screening for cervical cancer if you are 21 years and above. You need to make sure that you do your screening at least every 3 years. So how can you know that you have cervical cancer, or what are some of the signs and symptoms? Number one is that you might experience what we call postcoital bleeding. And this is a bleeding that occurs once or after having sexual intercourse. And so you might experience that whenever you have sexual intercourse, you end up bleeding after the sexual intercourse is done. Or you might also experience what we call dyspareunia. And this is where you feel pain, or you have pain when you are having sexual intercourse. Other symptoms include abnormal uterine bleeding, where you are bleeding in between your periods. And so you might find that even after your periods are over, maybe in between, before the next period, you end up bleeding again. Sometimes it might be heavy bleeding, sometimes it might just be very little bleeding called spotting. So depending on how severe the condition is. The other symptoms include having menorrhagia. So you might experience that you have very severe menstrual bleeding. Whenever you have your menstrual periods, your bleeding is very heavy. If if the cervical cancer has spread to other parts of the body, you might also experience other symptoms such as back pain or having a cough, because maybe the cancer has spread to the bones or to the respiratory system, which is the lungs. So these are some of the signs and some of the symptoms that one experiences when they have a cervical cancer. The other symptom that I have forgotten to mention is that you might experience a discharge from the vagina. Sometimes it might be watery, and other times it might be a bit bloody, so you might notice a brownish or a reddish discharge from your vagina. Sometimes this discharge may actually have a very strong smell or a very bad odor. And so look out for any discharge that you might have, any abnormal discharge that you might have, and make sure you get yourself checked if you notice anything abnormal from your vagina. So if you have any abnormal bleeding, any abnormal discharge, if you have pain whenever you having sexual intercourse, or if you bleed after having sexual intercourse, then you need to get checked and make sure that you get tested in the hospital to check if you have cervical cancer, or if you are at risk of having or developing cervical cancer. So these are some of the signs and symptoms. I do hope you have learned something. Today we talked about the signs and symptoms of cervical cancer, and we say that cervical cancer can present with bleeding after intercourse, which is postcoital bleeding, or it could present with pain during intercourse, or abnormal uterine bleeding where you bleed in between your periods, or abnormal discharge where you have a discharge that is not normal. It can be watery, or it can be reddish brownish. It can also have a different smell or a bad odor, and so you need to be able to look out for those symptoms. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time.
Well, there you have it. That was Dr. Mufaya there. Interesting conversation on cervical cancer. I hope you managed to get one or two important aspects of that topic of discussion. Quite an interesting subject. We always emphasize on the need for you to go for cervical cancer screening as women, to ensure that you keep health. And on this day where we are marking, celebrating women on Women's Day, it is important that we also reflect on the health aspect of everything. This year's theme for the Women's Day is digital innovation and technology for gender equality. And you too, our dear viewers, will be giving your perspective on how you are interpreting this theme, or how you are wishing your woman, your mother, your sister, women in general.
Actually, just call us and wish me a happy Women's Day. Let's just have this conversation.
So we can have a conversation.
Be nice
to
me, at least.
Yeah.
Be nice to me and the ladies here at Camnet TV. I think we would be happy to hear from you. So from the word go now, you can dial those numbers and get interactive with us. Basically, we just want you to wish the woman in your life, or the women in your life, and everybody else who's played a role in your upbringing, in your success, in everything that you deem success. You remember, I always say success is relative. What may be success to you may not be to another person, but it's always important to appreciate and believe that you can be successful at your own pace and according to what you understand success to be. Therefore, let us remember our women and let us appreciate them. Indeed, this year's theme, digital innovation and technology for gender equality. Patrick.
Yeah, quite interesting aspects. So let's look at how the Kwacha is feeling. We'll be back with our conversation on women.
I guess it's being nice.
Yeah.
Being Women's Day.
Ooh, but I
hope so. Let's look at it. Today being a holiday, we are using the stats for yesterday. The Great British Pound is buying at 23 kwacha 92 ngwe and selling at 24 kwacha 39 ngwe. The United States dollars is at 19 kwacha 95 ngwe and selling at 20 kwacha 34 ngwe. The euro is at 21 kwacha 28 ngwe and selling at 21 kwacha 70 ngwe. The South African rand is at 1 kwacha 08 ngwe and selling at 1 kwacha 11 ngwe. Those are your money markets. Remember, they vary from one financial institution to another, and you might just notice a little bit of a change, but they will be trading within the same range. Maybe Kangoefe, Kaponako, things like that. Yeah, but when you're changing a lot, it makes a difference.
But it has been misbehaving because it's going to 2020.
Yeah, and that's not what I want. Yeah. That's not what I want.
It's Vision 2020.
Vision 2020. Vision 2020. However, that is how the culture is faring against the major convertibles. This morning, we are focusing all our energies on women and their stories and what they've been in our lives and their contribution to development both at household and national level. And generally, we are also taking cognizance that Zambia has taken a very good step insofar as promoting the women agenda in politics, Patrick, you are aware that we have at least the second vice president being a woman, Mutalina Lumango, and the first being Woma Inongewina. Very appreciative of the political leaders that have been there, the Patriotic Front and the UPND this time around. We're grateful, and these women are serving as an inspiration to the girl child, and they are a mirror that we can use, you know. I remember Dalina Lumanga is very funny. She was a teacher, and she was a teacher to my brother, actually. He always mentions that. She posted something on social media, and then Sean Tembo, one of the opposition leaders, said something, and then said, Mwanawandi, I was a teacher. What I mean here is this, and this is correct English, you know. The dictionary I'm using, you know, it's like, oh my. Yeah. Very interesting woman. She is celebrating the Women's Day in Kabwe, and we hope that the people in Kabwe will turn out in large numbers and celebrate this day with her. And in Lusaka, we have a number of activities lined up celebrating women. Yeah, quite a number of activities here have been lined up. But talking about women, we are still very far. Much as we have seen quite progress in terms of the aspect of the presidential running mate. Yeah. Zambians are asking for a little bit more. Yes. We need women in to be serving as cabinet ministers, because if you look at the disparity between men and women, even in the current cabinet, it leaves much to be desired. If you look at grassroots level, how many women are willing to contest as councillors? It's not, the number is not that overwhelming compared to men. Look at parliamentarians. The numbers are not tallying with the men. So it's about deliberate measures and efforts that the Zambian government has to put in place to ensure that this reflects the protocols that Zambia has signed to. Indeed, Patrick, talking about politics, I think the Women's Lobby, an NGO that usually focuses its attention on women in politics, it keeps on calling for more women to be adopted. It calls for political parties to come up with deliberate measures that will, say 30% is strictly women, then the 70% also should be gambled between men and women. Equally, the same thing when it comes to land administration. I think that one is still there. It's in the statutes. Like 30% of the land is for women, but then the 70% also will be gambled between men and women. This is aimed at enhancing women participation, or maybe enhancing women having more land, independent, and just promotion of gender equality. You are aware that globally, according to the United Nations, Patrick, women are the majority in this world. No wonder you men want to take advantage and marry 4 or 5 women simply because you think we are more than you and you want to take advantage of that situation, but it won't happen. But nowadays, it won't happen, Patrick. It's not very common, and it's no longer fashionable because of the high cost of living. The cost of living, but also the issue pertaining to diseases. Such as HIV, has really discouraged these tendencies, especially from our friends from the South. You know, they're the ones who actually prioritize this subject in terms of making but on the contrary, Patrick, they actually say it's better you bring them home than go out there because you're spreading, you know. So they've got this all reasons. If you cannot satisfy them, they'll go out, you know. And they'll come and bring to you. It's a whole bunch of bad cycle. So that's confusion. So it's a confusion. You have to have one partner. You have to be faithful to that same partner. If it is your fiancé, your boyfriend, or whatever, it has to be one. Patrick, your wife is not watching. Don't be too honest for lies. But I'm just telling you. But you know that anyways, I'm an honest man. I know that you're very honest when it comes to that. You're like B-Mark. You know? You're like B-Mark, very honest. It's too much. B-Mark is too much. No, I'm not going to say that because he will block me on all the platforms. So I won't say much. So one of the stories that we are zooming in yesterday in Parliament, where Patriotic Front, Nakonde, member of Parliament, Luke Simumba, challenged the United Party for National Development Administration to close the gay clinic at the University Teaching Hospital as a way of proving that they do not support gay rights. Speaking in Parliament Tuesday afternoon, Mr. Simumba is of the view that while the clinic was established during the Patriotic Front regime, it is incumbent upon the UPND to close it down now that it is in office and to end all accusations that the current administration is in support of LGBTQ rights. Meanwhile, PF members of Parliament Tuesday afternoon walked out walked out of Parliament after the second Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Moyo, asked the PF Member of Parliament for Nkana Binwampundu to leave the House for disorderly conduct. Zipporah filed this. Let's look at it and see what happened in Parliament yesterday.
Honourable Member for Nkana leave the House. Sergeant at Arms, ensure that he leaves the House.
The issue of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex plus, which has been trending since Saturday 4th March 2023, after the Sister Foundation, resulted in a heated debate in Parliament Tuesday, and even saw some Patriotic Front PF members of Parliament, as they felt that those inquiring on the same were being blocked from doing so. Nkana Member of Parliament Binwampundu was asked to go out of the House by Second Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly Moses Moyo after he protested the decision by the Second Deputy Speaker to cut short the question by Petauke Member of Parliament Emmanuel Banda, who was asking on the same, after Mr. Banda allegedly repeated the insulting language that was being used by the protesters during the march past. This saw PF MPs walking out of Parliament in solidarity with Nkana MP Binwampundu, who was ushered out by the Sergeant at Arms. Meanwhile, PF MPs took turns accusing the UPND of being in support of gay rights. PF Nakonde Member of Parliament Lucas Imumba questioned why the UPND government has not closed down the gay clinic at the University Teaching Hospital UTH.
Mr. Speaker, my question is, why have you created a clinic at UTH which is in operation if you don't support gayism? And if you found that clinic in operation, why haven't you closed it? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
In responding, Minister of Home Affairs and Internal Security Jack Mwimbu challenged that the same was open during the PF administration.
You go to UTH and find out from the officers there and find out from the leaders of PF who were in government then, who are here. They will tell you that they are the ones who created that clinic. Don't blame us. You should be the ones to tell us why you created it.
The debate continued in Parliament.
I have been persuaded by certain individuals who are known to ensure and make the public lose faith in the UPND. When we know that those who are doing that have been conniving and cohabiting with those who believe in gayism. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
If you are to go to Honorable Minister of Justice constituency in Baulen in the evening, what we witness there, it has never happened in this country. What action are you taking to ensure that those who not only collude, but also promote these are natural and Zambian acts, and African acts actually, are brought to book?
I would urge the Honourable Member of Parliament to report that illegal act which he witnessed and where he was, uploading, and he has evidence. Let him go and report to the police, Mr. Speaker.
Meanwhile, Zambia Police Deputy Spokesperson Danny Mwale says the Zambia Police has charged and arrested 4 people in connection with the march, among them the founder of the Sister Foundation, Gladys Mwangala, adding that those arrested will appear in court soon. Zipporah Mshala, Camnet News, Lusaka.
Well, there you have it. That has been topical in Zambia. Issues pertaining to the LGBTQI community. We are seeing that these issues are becoming more prominent.
They're becoming more prominent by the day.
Yeah, so I think there are quite a number of reasons behind that. And if you see these bold platforms we use, such as Facebook, and how people, this agenda is increasingly becoming common in Zambia, I think it will really take a serious government to really address it. But if you
Indeed.
look at the position by this government, they say they do not endorse, they do not support. But again, it's a very controversial subject in that you saw one Brian Sampa, who was the former Residents Doctors Association president. When he wanted to take a protest against such acts, he was stopped and he was arrested
within minutes,
and some
including
journalists
some
were
journalists.
also casualties. And you see that now these people, they had to finish their procession and everything. The IRS had to follow them the following day.
Yeah.
And it was just a normal someone. You know, so sometimes again the double standards that are applied in terms of enforcing the law
leaves much to be desired.
Yeah, tend to make people question.
Yeah.
You see, you know, Zambians are not docile. They are observing.
No,
they know
not.
what's happening.
The same way this community wants to impose these beliefs of theirs amongst us is the same way we are at work as well. We don't want to get these things into our homes. And, you know, I was listening to one of the conversations on social media platforms. There's this guy who was saying, I'm not against what these people believe in. What I'm against is them trying to shovel their beliefs into our children and us. Believe in what you believe in. That's all. Live with it. You know?
Don't start
exactly. Don't do that. That's what I'm against. And equally myself, I've got no boundaries. I've got no let me not say boundaries, but I've got no access as to how much I can push you to do certain things. As an adult, Patrick, you've got your own ways in which you want to live your life. You make your own rules. You make your own things. You decide because you're over above 18, and you know, according to our laws, when you're 18, you can make your own independent decisions. I'm leaving you to do that. What I don't want is for you to come and tell me no. You start trying to convince me. You start lecturing me. You say, I'm not gonna really.
Exactly.
I'm not gonna take that lightly because I've got my own. I think it's important. I respect you. Do whatever you can do. If I don't want to be part of what you're doing, allow me to be. You know, don't start convincing me. Don't start teaching my child to say this is normal. And when you look at that march past, Patrick, it included children wearing T-shirts that were screaming chants on slogans that really align to their to what they believe in. Now imagine a child should be thinking, I'm okay to choose who I want to be. Iwe. Iwe.
In the Zambian society,
you know. So this is what happens also when you are advancing, you're developing as a country. You begin to bring in all these things. And one thing...
I also say that poverty is just a crime.
Exactly.
Because if you see, people can impose even useless agendas on you because of poverty. Because you're begging. And they say, okay, if you want us to give you this, probably you have to be flexible.
And most of the NGOs... not mentioning names, they've really failed to speak out on this.
Because their funding is compromised.
Because their funding comes from some of these organizations. They've got huge funding. You know, you find organizations, Patrick, I'm not going to mention again, there's an organization that we've been covering for a very long time, and their focus was on certain things, but you wonder how they've incorporated sexual reproductive health in their agenda at the moment. So I was like, but you know, your focus was this.
But why?
How come there's this SRH? And when you look at it carefully, inside that sexual reproductive health education or whatever, there's that devil in that detail, you know?
Someone wants to interact with us.
How initially for ya? Hello, good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mama. How are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay.
Great.
Yes. I just wanted to make a comment.
Go ahead, tell us your name and where you're calling from, then you go straight into your comment.
Yes, I've seen your video of lesbian association.
Yeah.
I also think that usually is for graduates, people who are very educated. These are the children of the people who are living not their life. Especially our rich people, our ministers, the student America, so that's where they think, oh, that's nonsense. And the people who have come now, who are doing this yes. Let's look at, let's take it different. Someone from John Hopper, from Kanyama, a poor person that no skin, cannot do such type of thing. So these are the people who are wrecking our society. So the ministers and all those who are making noise in parliament, that people who are having these children, it's not my children, me who is taking the village. It is them who are teaching their children. They let this manner not in Zambia, but outside this country. So let them not involve our society. Let them take back them where they took them for education. Thank you.
All right.
Interesting views there.
Thank you so much indeed, Patrick. You were saying poverty is a crime. You can never be more clear than that. You can never be more clear than that. Of course, you too can have your say on this conversation we are having this morning, not forgetting that we are celebrating women. Today is Women's Day, and indeed the theme being digital innovation and technology for gender equality. How are you translating this theme? What does it mean to you? Or you can just call us and appreciate that woman in your life. Just call us. Just call us and say Happy Women's Day to my mom, to my sister, to my wife, you know? At least on air you can say it.
Yes, we see.
Indeed, Patrick, you said to be poor is a crime because you won't have a choice. So these guys that have well placed, they are upper mwambas, the rich guys, they send their the culture there. They even know how to source for funds because they know that in this community, they even source for funds there. They even say no form organization will be funding it indirectly. They start teaching people what initially for. Stop teaching us. Allow us to decide.
And if you see how the mass media has also been infiltrated, you know, even countries like Zambia, we have limitations. Even on digital migration, we should have made our own choice as a country in terms of what we want on the platforms. If you look at the board platforms we are utilizing, most of them, the content they are providing is deliberately tilted towards changing the culture.
Almost all the culture. Exactly.
You know, you are seeing Zambians behaving more like Indians. You are seeing Zambians behaving like Americans, like they're from the UK, because it's what we are seeing on TV through and through. But to what extent are we injecting the Zambian culture?
The moral fiber.
Yeah, you see. So now, our morals, our culture has been depleted at a faster rate, and if we're not doing anything about it, we have no culture. And a nation that has no culture and tradition is a lost nation.
Exactly.
Because it gets everything. It means there is no
garbage in, garbage out, everything.
No morals and the principles to talk about in Zambia. Even that address the president makes in parliament will be unnecessary.
It will be meaningless.
It will be a country of an organized state, so to say. Because culture, just like religion, they will help us stick to good norms. Norms that are perceived to be good for us. Now, if we depart from that, it means that, have you seen people in the West doing like Rengonis do?
No.
During their traditional ceremony?
Do they even have traditional ceremony?
In America? Have you seen Chimbanda in Sweden? You don't see those things. But because they have an upper hand in terms of what they wanted to decide what we should be following. Much as it is the global community, we are talking about the world being the global village. As a country, we should be in a position to decide. You know, when we start making decisions to decide, we should be able to make use of our resources and our environment and everything. So what I mean is that we need to start dictating the platforms we use. Most of them, even the platforms
are foreign owned.
WhatsApp, Facebook, these are not our platforms.
We have no
control. What extent is this administration thinking to say, no, Zambia should be communicating through the Zambia app? They should be, we should not allow any other apps. focus on our app.
Do we even have those applications?
You understand? Because we don't have. But the truth be told, we have developers who can develop an application like that. In this era, we have people who can do that. But what access are we willing to market?
That's why we have the Ministry of Science and Technology.
Technology, yes. Now, we need to be going towards that direction, but we're not seeing any traction. And we want to be a country that is independent. We want to be a country that is want to detect its future. And we want to be a middle-income country.
And you want to be...
start making the tough decisions.
Yeah.
You understand? Like owning things and imposing them on others as well. Now, everyone else is going to impose things on us. We'll see Malawi imposing things on us soon.
Our extension,
yes,
the province, all right.
We'll
develop something.
Zambia, you are too behind. Can you
do this?
So
all right, let's look at one of the stories, Patrick, that we ran yesterday, where non-state actors have urged government to put in place policies that will see women, girls, children, and people with disabilities and other marginalized groups have access to digital space, noting that there is currently a digital information gap as most electronic gadgets are beyond their reach. Operation Young Vote Executive Director Guest Nyarinda notes that with the introduction of online voter registration and the country moving forward towards online voting, there is need to ensure digital inclusion. Meanwhile, Governance, Elections, Advocacy Research Services Gears Programs Coordinator Gideon Musonda observes that the digital space has become one of the most preferred modes of information sharing, stating that this therefore indicates that those on these platforms will not be left uninformed. Let's look at this.
The fate of electorates in rural areas, those living below the poverty line, as well as marginalized groups comprising women, girls, and persons with disabilities, has become a concern for stakeholders, as most gadgets from which they can access the internet are costly, leaving them lagging behind in information. This is so because the internet has become one of the most preferred modes of information dissemination, with some newspapers working solely on the digital space. The digital information gap that has affected this group has posed as a source of concern for the Media Institute for Southern Africa, MISA, who convened a workshop for various stakeholders in Lusaka aimed at discussing digital rights. Speaking to Camnet News after the workshop, Operation Young Vote Executive Director Guest Nyarinda says digital rights should be viewed as human rights.
Because then remember that because these are human rights, they also affect our participation and engagement in the electoral process. And when we begin to talk about online voting, we begin to talk about online registration and so on and so forth. These are digital rights, and these must actually be accessed by each and every individual. And this is when now we begin to talk about inclusion. And when we talk about inclusion, we do not specify to say, no, it is this group or that group. It must just be across the board, and every Zambian who actually, qualifies in terms of us being on the digital platform.
Meanwhile, Governance, Elections, Advocacy Research Services Gears Programs Coordinator Gideon Musonda states that in an event of a shrinking civic space, the internet offers alternatives.
You may be aware that in the just in the recent past, there was a situation where we experienced the shrinking civic space. So what it meant was the issue of how can people participate in the online space, and so that goes with those rights that need to be enjoyed.
MISA National Coordinator Austin Kayanda has also spoken on digital rights.
We tried to share in terms of what laws are impacting on their work and what laws they can use to advocate for the change in terms of enjoyment of these digital rights. As you are aware, the digital rights platform is basically enshrined in the Zambian constitution and the freedom of expression. But at the same time, you have 21 laws that takes away that freedom of enjoyment of that right.
They therefore state that it is imperative to introduce policies that will ensure that all citizens are included. Zipporah Mshala, Camnet News, Lusaka.
All right, we are still talking about women and appreciating them for who they are and what they've been to society, their contribution to national development and household level as well. It starts from a home and then it grows into a nation. Say healthy families build healthy nations, and therefore we are calling on you viewers out there to just call and appreciate your mothers, your sisters, and everybody else who's played a role in your life. Indeed, Patrick, we are talking about women this morning, and the theme that I keep forgetting, and I keep turning this page behind, but it's supposed to be in my head: digital innovation and the technology for gender equality. It speaks, the story that we just read speaks to this theme as well, Patrick, where those two stakeholders from GEARS and Operation Young Vote are talking about transforming the nation into a digital agenda, where if we are to go for the proposed digital voting, we need to ensure that people in this sector, in various sectors, especially women specifically on that story, and people with special needs as well, digitally survey or technologically survey, so that even when the time comes for them to vote digitally, they will be able to do it. But then how far are we going to, how far are we, and how much do we need to put in to ensure that this digital space is friendly to everybody, including persons with disability? Most of the times, this group is left unattended to. Of course, in the previous election, we saw there were Braille jackets, where people with sight issues were able to vote using, is it Braille ballot papers? And we surely hope that in 2026 there will be another advancement that will help people with special needs in the other sector do a better job. Quite a right, complaints were raised that there's no much sensitization was done in that category, but we hope that next time it will be improved and the lessons were learned that far.
Interesting views there you bring out, and we hope that as a country will equally move with time in terms of advancing these digital rights. They are quite important, especially for vulnerable groups. And talking about vulnerable groups, women also fall into that category. Bracket. And we have to just make sure that as a country we continue to put in place modalities. Then that said, it also brings me to the issue of the Ministry of Gender. I think we need to bring back the Ministry of Gender, if you ask me, Sharon. Yeah. And I'm responding that yes, we need it, because at the end of the day, you've seen that you've never heard any statement from the Gender Division. No. Ever since,
it's like it's not there.
Ever since
can they take me there? Can they take me there?
So this Gender Division needs to be like an anchor, to be an anchor of everything. It has to be on the mean to ensure that it coordinates everything pertaining to gender. But if you see the way matters of gender have been addressed, they have been addressed in isolation. But when we were the parent ministry, it was easy to coordinate various players, such as the civil society organizations, government institutions, and gender mainstreaming was slowly becoming a reality. Yeah. But now we are seeing that it is becoming a far-fetched dream, and that the aspiration of us achieving the 50-50 gender parity is becoming impossible, because if this the advocacy is slowing down and the ministry is no longer there. And if
what was the essence, Patrick, if I ask, what was the essence of doing away with that ministry as a whole? Because for me, I think creating the Ministry of SME is actually even the worst that could happen to us. Yes. Because that was a department under the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry. It should have been remained like that. But the Gender Division, which department was it? It wasn't. It was an independent ministry.
So the ministry now is just relegated to a department
where it's gone silent.
Now, and it is silent. So if you look at that aspect there, it tells you that that department is not functioning as it should, because you are seeing that according to statistics that we are always getting from the Zambia police, the figures are not are not good when it comes to gender issues. You're seeing that we are still facing high cases of gender-based violence in the country. we're still facing challenges in terms of incorporating women in various sectors. So, but the ministry was used to remind institutions, other government ministries, to say, no. While you are Minister of Justice, we are also reminding you to ensure that you take the gender aspect into consideration. But you know,
what do they do?
They probably took it as a consultative ministry, which sometimes I would beg to disagree. In that it was also a productive ministry. In that, if you look at the protocols which Zambia as
signatory to
in the region. At continent level, as well as across the globe at UN level, there are quite of protocols that Zambia has equally domesticated, and we are seeing that without the ministry, it's becoming difficult to follow up on these protocols and to just understand what we are doing in terms of even policy formulation. Have you ever had any policy that is gender related under this administration?
No. You know, there's...
We saw you.
Savoy.
Yeah, so...
You know, she's always saying, this administration does not support gender equality. You know, she's constantly singing this song all the time, you know?
Yeah. So if you look at that, I think, for me, you know, if women are the most affected, the most vulnerable, then if you safeguard the plight of women, it means that the nation will be well off.
Yeah.
You know, when women are well taken care of, you know, they'll be able to translate that into our children. But if women are being raised as drunkards, you are seeing children, most of the children becoming junkies. Because this parent is not even accustomed to the better way of raising a child.
Yeah.
So now, what happens? She's a single parent, and she does not know how to raise a child. You know, what happens is that she just lets the child grow on their own.
Yeah.
And even in this community we're talking about, we even take advantage of that child and even initiate the child into
the nonsense that is going around.
So, but if you empower women to understand their rights, to understand to be self-reliant, they won't depend on anyone for help. They won't be in a vulnerable position. Women will be able to excel in
this job for the Ministry of Gender was left to NGOs, but I think as government it needs to ensure that it takes a leading role as always, you know, while others follow. You cannot leave things in the private hands. You know, as a parent, you don't expect your neighbor to raise your child. Exactly. I don't think it should be like that. We always ensure that our children are raised by us. We've heard parents actually say, no, you know, this is not the way I've raised you. This is not the knowledge or information I've imparted in you. Where did you get this? Where did you get this strange behavior? Where did you get this, you know, bad behavior? Because you know how you're raising your children. But then I wonder if at all this, our parent, government, to say, will have any say and say, this is not the way I raised you. At this point, the way we are moving,
they won't, because they have relegated their duties.
Yes, so now, to the neighbor, to the neighbor who's bringing in all sorts of rubbish into their children's lives, and they are watching. They have little to no say. They keep going back and forth, saying, "No, you created this clinic. Go and check there. If you find names for my father, it is your father. Your previous." I mean, what is that?
So if I committed something wrong, and Sharon, you thought it was wrong.
You carry on with it. Opportunity, I'll carry on with it because it's you.
It's okay. Patrick Soko's wrong is okay.
It's okay.
But what makes it right now when it's
you know, when it's you? So really, can we be serious with certain things that we do? They look simple, but they're not. They are very complex, and they impact our lives very much. Beyond what we can actually understand. And I was very surprised, Patrick, talking about this same story of LGBTQI, this same because I'm not very much interested in this. You know, this organization has been in existence for 5 years. That's a very long time.
And indirectly
they've been pushing the agenda because if you know, And 5 years, they've been pushing the agenda, and this time around they just said, let us go out and protest. What rubbish.
Let's test the waters.
Let's test the waters. Our laws are very clear. Of course, the people probably in authority may not enforce it to the latter, but our laws are very clear when it comes to such. And appreciative also is our former president, Edgar Lungu, was very categorical on this.
Just like Kenyatta.
Yes, very categorical on this. And he actually said, one of the interviews, it actually changed on TikTok. I even have it on my phone. He said, if it's the aid that you want to bring to us and impose this gay whatever rights, let us remain in our poverty. You know, he was being interviewed by one of these international media houses, and he said, "No,
and they
we are not." Yes, yeah, they will impose that question. Say, "No, but even if they say you are going to remove aid because you don't want support," he said, "No, we are going to remain in our poverty. We will remain." He was categorical on that. At least among many things that he did, that one stands out.
That one was categorical.
He was categorical. He never missed his words, and he was very sure of what he said. All the time he was asked that question, he said, this is a no. If it means living in poverty, we will remain. We will not forgo our values, our morals, our traditions, our culture, simply because we want to receive aid from people who are going to say, okay, we'll give you money, and instead of that, you support this. We're not going to do that. And Kenyatta, is it Kenyatta as well?
Yes.
Museveni as well?
Yoweri
Museveni is very categorical also on that.
Even Ruto. I mean, we have seen Kenya, declaring days of prayer because of the cost decision.
Yeah, you know. So really, these things with African countries are far-fetched. Our laws are clear unless we amend our constitution to incorporate this, of which it won't be now. It won't be now. I'm very sure about it.
It's not easy because Africa has been known to be a begging continent. You can imagine we have a continental body like the African Union, mostly dependent on the European Union, mostly dependent on the other partners. So if we are to be serious as a country, some agendas that are under the African Union, the Pan-Africanism has to be really strengthened if we are to make progress. Because we are seeing our children going to abroad, borrow the foreign culture and trying to endorse them in our society. So
I can't even begin to imagine.
Yeah. So anyway, let's just zoom in. Some of the stories that are coming from the courts are there, where we have the story where the Director of Public Prosecution, Gilbert Piri, says it is within his powers to revoke the immunity of former Konkola Copper Mines provisional liquidator Miringo Lungu and subject him to prosecution. The DPP has told the Constitutional Court that he has the power to review the decision to prosecute in line with Section 8(2), adding that the contempt proceedings commenced by Mr. Lungu against it is scandalous, frivolous, vexatious, and the abuse of the court process.
Those words.
Interesting words there. Another story is where a state witness has testified before the Economics and Financial Crimes Court that there was nothing illegal for Ndozo Lodges and Mulozi Company to own vehicles. Let's get to listen to these two stories. We'll be back on the other side. Keep it on Camnet.
The Director of Public Prosecution, DPP Gilbert Piri, has backed his decision to revoke the immunity of former Konkola Copper Mines provisional liquidator Miringo Lungu, adding that he was within his powers to review the decision to prosecute Mr. Lungu because Section 8(2) gives him the powers to do so. In this matter, the former KCM provisional liquidator has filed an application before the Constitutional Court seeking a court order to commence contempt proceedings against the DPP, Mr. Piri, for revoking his immunity from prosecution. In his submission before court, the DPP says it is not in dispute that the immunity agreement was revoked. However, the law is superior to any contract or agreement, and any agreement contrary to the laws can be vitiated, adding that the reviewing and revoking of the immunity agreement was done in good faith and in the exercise of the DPP's function. and that the matter is a mere manifestation of Mr. Lungu's desire to undermine the cause of justice and interfere with the DPP's legitimate exercise of power. Meanwhile, the Constitutional Court has given the former KCM provisional liquidator a go-ahead to file the record of motion out of time. In this matter, Mr. Milingo Lungu is seeking contempt proceedings against the Director of Public Prosecution, Gilbert Peary, for revoking his immunity from prosecution in the case where he was charged with abuse of authority of office and possession of property deemed to be proceeds of crime. Mr. Lungu says on the 17th of March 2022, he entered into a non-prosecution or immunity agreement with the former DPP, exempting him from prosecution for acts done in the performance of his duties as provisional liquidator of KCM. However, when Mr. Peary was sworn in as DPP, he announced at a press conference that he had revoked the immunity agreement granted to him based on public outcry. Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News. The court has entered day 2 into trial in a matter in which a Lusaka businessman and Ndozo Lodge's proprietor Prince Sichamba and others are facing corruption charges before the subordinate court in Lusaka. Tuesday, the accused appeared once again before the Economic Financial Crimes Court, where the court has held that there was nothing illegal for Ndozo Lodges and Molozi Company to own vehicles. Shadrick Njozo, an assistant station manager at the Road Transport and Safety Agency, took the stand in the witness dock and told Lusaka Magistrate Irene Wishmanga that wife to Mr. Sichamba, Edora Nambila, had 4 motor vehicles registered in her name. However, she followed all the requirement procedure. He also indicated that Ndozo Lodges Limited had 10 vehicles, while Molozi Trading Limited had 26, and that the accused met all the requirement and procedure when they purchased the said motor vehicles. Former President Edgar Lungu's associate, Mr. Sichamba, is standing trial to 133 counts charges bordering on corruptly acquiring property. He is standing trial alongside his wife Edora Nambila and son David. The trio have been jointly charged with Ndozo Lodges and Molozi Trading Limited, co-directors and shareholders. Mr. Sichamba, his wife Edora Nambila and son David are alleged to have been in possession of over 781 million kwacha and more than 10 million United States dollars. The trio was also arrested for possession of properties suspected of being proceeds of crime. The matter stands adjourned. Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News.
All right, those are the 2 court stories that we read yesterday. We continue to follow them up when court resumes tomorrow. Today, being Women's Day, of course, it is a holiday, and we are closing the show right about now so that we go and enjoy our Women's Day. You know.
Yeah, hope to see you there.
Hope to see me there. You will see me there, Patrick. You will see me there, and that's where I'm rushing to, so that I can, you know, represent you well as an institution, of course, not you as a man.
Interesting. Wow, like we said earlier, women are taking over everything today, and Soko is going to be relaxing the entire day. So if you are a woman, I'm wishing you all the best, and I would like to wish every special woman, my mother, my wife, my colleague Sharon Kalimbula, Zipola Mushara, Prudence Chota, Kaluba Mushota, who else? Miriam Kaimba.
She'll beat you.
Interesting. I think I've mentioned all the women that I know of so
Indeed,
far.
Patrick, thank you so much to all the women that have played a part in our lives. I also want to take cognizance of my older sister, Audrey Kalimbola from Akite. Happy Women's Day to you, our mama, my sisters, and everyone else, really. Thank you so much for being who you are in my life.
Till tomorrow, when we come back with the Camnet Breakfast show on the edition of Governance, Politics, and Policy. This has been Patrick Soko and Sharon Kalimbula. Keep it on Camnet, because Camnet TV
is not just another channel. Thanks for watching.